Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Maya Trabulsi, and thank you for joining us. San Diego County is considering options for clearing homeless encampments on high fire risk days. Today, the Board of Supervisors directed staff to study the idea and come back in 90 days with the results. KPBS North County reporter Alexander Nguyen has more.
But about 50% of the fires in California have been started by homeless in their encampments.
That's Supervisor Jim Desmond, citing a 2021 statistic from the LA Fire Department.
In January alone, in San Diego, we had 3 fires started by homeless encampments.
He's referring to the Fires Fire in Mission Valley, the Center Fire in Rancho Bernardo, and the Gilman Fire in La Jolla. The causes for those fires are still officially listed as under investigation. Desmond says this is a public safety issue and not a war on homelessness. He wants county staff to look at options for ways to remove encampments on red flag warning days, when fire danger is highest.
We all know there's a significant fire risk during red fire warning days. So do we just sit back and wait, or do we try to do things to prevent that? We know fires often start in the homeless encampments, so I think we have to take action.
Valley Center Fire Chief Joe Napier agrees with Desmond, saying the proposal gives a bit more teeth for enforcement to existing laws.
This is an extra measure for us to be able to go out and find people who are in imminent danger in their own home encampment, who are using cooking fires to eat and warming fires at night, because even during Santa Ana conditions, those fires can exit those encampments, and fire moves so quickly through our brush and in the backcountry specifically.
Some homeless advocates, however, oppose this, saying there's nowhere else for unhoused individuals to go.
Because every municipality in the region, effectively following the lead of San Diego, created a law that says you can't camp in our inner city areas. We pushed everybody into more dangerous regions.
Well, it just won't work. I mean, it's going to really damage the homeless if we don't have a place for them to stay.
Once locations of encampments of high-risk areas are identified, how will they be relocated? Are you having buses?
Desmond acknowledges there are a lot of logistical issues to work out, but the proposal only asks that staff come back in 90 days with options for clearing encampments.
Because we have not fixed homelessness yet. But so I'm asking staff to address housing options, vouchers, potential parking lots, where we can potentially transport people and move them during high fire days.
The proposal passed unanimously. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
And today, county supervisors voted not to support a state bill that aims to give local authorities more say in where battery storage facilities should go. Under current law, companies are able to get approval for certain projects at the state level. Assembly Bill 303 would give that power back to local jurisdictions. Lithium battery fires could be challenging to put out. Our media partner KGTV spoke to residents near a storage facility in Otay Mesa, where a fire erupted last May.
I'm angry that they would even consider putting something like this in a residential area where there's homes surrounding the entire facility on all 4 sides.
Supervisors rejected the motion to support State Assembly Bill 303 in 3-1 vote in today's meeting. The San Diego Sheriff's Department is facing a civil rights complaint for the death of a man in its jail last year. KPBS reporter Katie Hyson says the lawsuit claims a widespread and persistent pattern of unconstitutional misconduct. Now the story contains descriptions of violence.
Brandon Yates was booked into Central Jail on January 15th last year. Within 24 hours, he was found face down on his cell floor, naked, hands and feet bound behind his back, dead. Yates's cellmate was arrested for his murder. Yates's father Dan.
The San Diego County jail system doesn't seem to value human life. The Sheriff's Department is aware of the existing problems, but consistently ignores them.
The complaint says jail staff classified the cellmate as a, quote, bypass inmate. He wasn't supposed to share a cell. He had a history of violence. It alleges Yates screamed for help for an hour, repeatedly pushing the cell's panic button.
Sadly, these failures are not isolated incidents. They reflect a deeply broken culture within the San Diego County jail system.
Last year, the county paid to settle another jail death lawsuit, $15 million. The San Diego Sheriff's Department reports 149 people have died in its custody since 2015. The department declined to comment. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
The White House says 1 million federal workers have replied to an email demanding that they explain their work. Now, Elon Musk says those who haven't answered could still be fired if they don't respond a second time. Washington correspondent Julia Benbrook has that update.
There's still a lot of back and forth about the email guidance first previewed by Elon Musk, who has been tasked by President Donald Trump with reforming the federal government. While Trump has called this idea, quote, pretty ingenious, workers are still receiving mixed messages. Over the weekend, Musk posted on X that federal workers were required to respond to an email with bullet points on what they accomplished last week, or it would be seen as a resignation. Monday afternoon, the Trump administration said responding was voluntary. But then Monday evening, Musk circled back to say failure to respond a second time will result in termination, without giving workers a new deadline. The White House attempted to clarify the contradictory guidance on Tuesday.
The Office of Personnel and Management sent out additional guidance last night. Those responses should be directed to agency leadership, and the president defers to his cabinet secretaries, who he's obviously entrusted to pursue the guidance relative to their specific workforce.
Several of Trump's agency leads have instructed their workers not to respond to the email. The scramble to discern the exact intentions of the email has added another layer of uncertainty to an already rattled federal workforce. At the White House, I'm Julia Benbrook.
The Justice Department states its mission is to enforce the rule of law, its values, independence, and impartiality. But legal experts warn the department's recent moves and memos signal an alarming shift. KPBS's Amitha Sharma is here to explain how that impacts San Diego's office. Welcome, Amitha.
Oh, it's good to be with you, Maya.
The Justice Department dismissed the corruption case against New York Mayor Eric Adams. So can you please tell us how much of this worry among legal experts do you think stems from that?
So much, Maya. Just a little bit more background. The Justice Department ordered federal prosecutors 2 weeks ago to drop bribery and fraud charges against New York Mayor Adams or risk being fired. Now, they did this without examining the power of the evidence. Some prosecutors decided to resign instead. The rationale provided by the Trump administration for the dismissal of that case was it would hinder Adams' ability to help the administration enforce its illegal immigration crackdown. But so many people see it as a quid pro quo. And for that reason, I'm told by sources, it has unnerved every single federal prosecutor in the San Diego U.S. Attorney's Office for two reasons. It violates the pillars of their job, integrity being one, autonomy being another. I spoke with former San Diego U.S. Attorney Carol Lamb, and she views the Adams case as a warning shot to federal prosecutors across the country to heal. She actually used that language, that word, heal, and one that will play out with the next U.S. Attorney in San Diego.
I think you're going to see either total obedience or some push and pull, and some difficult times that might come to pass if this next U.S. attorney is determined to do what's best for the community, as opposed to just following orders from Washington.
Lamb believes
all of this will have enormous influence on which cases federal prosecutors in San Diego work on. She says if immigration cases are elevated above others, then that means local federal prosecutors will likely not pursue white-collar crimes like public corruption. That includes cases like those against former Republican Congressman Duncan Hunter and Randy Duke Cunningham, both of whom Trump pardoned. Lamb was the U.S. attorney in San Diego when Cunningham pled guilty to corruption. Today, she says, that prosecution would give her pause.
Now, if I were U.S. attorney and the same kind of case were to come into the office, I have to confess, I think that would be one of the first issues in my head about is this a Democrat or a Republican? And I just really don't think that that's what the American people want.
Attorney General Pam Bondi also fired off some memos to federal prosecutors. There's a line in one that refers to Justice Department attorneys. It says if they refuse to advance good, fair arguments by declining to be in court or sign briefs, they are depriving the president of, quote, the benefit of his lawyers. Former U.S. Attorney Harry Litman says that's an obvious red flag because those lawyers are supposed to represent the law, the Constitution, not the president.
The message is whatever Trump wants, Trump gets, and there was a similar portion of an executive order that said that, and that means if Trump's views don't accord with the law, are not constitutional, you have to do them anyway.
And there is more language that states the obvious, such as, quote, there is no place in the decision-making process for animosity or careerism, and a statement that in the past, federal and state prosecutors have been weaponized. Litman says it's part of a theme.
They're full of little snipes and attacks on people within the department. You would never, ever, ever see that kind of insulting, nasty language in previous memos from previous attorneys general. And indeed, you know, the notion is it's one continuous Department of Justice.
And Maya, just to close the loop on how all of this affects local cases, in one of those Justice Department orders, there is an order that would revoke a Biden administration order to prosecute environmental misconduct cases in communities of color and low-income communities. Now, Litman tells me that the rescission of that Biden administration order could mean that those environmental misconduct cases are no longer prosecuted in those communities here in San Diego.
Oh, some great interviews you got there and some really good information. Thanks so much, Amitha.
Thank you, Maya.
And this story is part of our Public Matters initiative. You can learn more about it on our website, kpbs.org/public matters.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, the Trump administration faces more legal setbacks and ramps up attacks on the media. That's at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Native American and Alaska Native women make up a significant part of missing and murdered people in the United States. That is according to the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs. Here in San Diego County, a summit is underway to raise awareness of the problem. KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne says it's drawn tribes from across the country.
7 years ago, Khadijah Rose Britton disappeared from Mendocino County. She was 23 years old then, and a member of the Round Valley Indian tribe.
She was very friendly young lady, very athletic when she was in school, and got along with everybody and always willing to help people, help them out,
Lydia Hostler is Khadijah's grandmother. On Tuesday, her family traveled to Paula Casino for the 3rd annual Missing and Murdered Indigenous People Tribal Policy Summit.
A lot of people in our valley that have been murdered and missing, and Khadijah's one of them right now that is ongoing. I don't know about the investigations because they stopped talking to us as family.
Michelle Merrifield is Khadijah's cousin. She says many cases are going cold because of disputes over jurisdiction.
The cops and the Mendocino County sheriffs, any other investigators that were involved are just saying, this happened on your tribal land, your reservation, you take care of it.
Public Law 280 is a U.S. federal law that passed in 1953. It transferred law enforcement jurisdiction of certain cases from tribal police to state police. Problem is, state law enforcement agencies often face a lack of resources and cultural understanding of cases involving indigenous people.
Every jurisdiction is different, you know. We have all these tribes, but a lot of them don't all click the same way, so we're just trying to share good experiences, bad experiences, and try to come to help each other.
Robert Smith is the chairman of the Paula Band of Mission Indians. The reservation hosted this year's summit to educate the wider community of the issue and the obstacles they face.
Us all networking, talking, hearing the stories of the victims' families and the frustrations of calling in a feather alert and working with law enforcement.
A feather alert is a statewide notification system that works like Amber Alerts for missing children. Smith says San Diego County tribes have a good working relationship with law enforcement and have very few missing indigenous people cases.
We don't have any cases. We just had one last week. It was a runaway teenager, 16 years old, but the sheriff's on it very fast. They had to ask her out and they found her safe, but we don't have very many cases like that. We're fortunate, but who knows? You got to be ready if someone comes. But
other tribes are pushing for more resources and representation in their communities. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
Tax season has collided with headlines about IRS layoffs and cuts. Karen Kafa explains what it could mean for your return and refund.
Last week, the IRS was expected to start layoffs of more than 6,000 employees as part of the Trump administration's broader cuts to the federal workforce at the agency's busiest time of year.
We know that when the IRS is understaffed, as it was in the 2010s, it makes refunds slower. It means they have a hard time answering their phones if you've got questions.
Vanessa Williamson, a senior fellow in governance studies at the Brookings Institution, says the cuts could impact important taxpayer resources.
There's some evidence that a lot of the cuts are going to come to people who help small business owners who have some of the most complicated taxes of anyone. So if you haven't filed, I recommend you file as soon as possible.
Tom O'Sabin, Director of Tax Content and Government Relations at the National Association of Tax Professionals, says amid leaner IRS staffing, taxpayers should try to limit the need for person-to-person contact with the agency.
What it means is if there's any possibility to electronically file your return, do so. Whether you're using a tax professional or you're filing or you're on your own, or you use the direct file system, which is relatively new at the IRS, try to submit your return electronically.
O'Sabin adds that careful preparation can also minimize omissions and errors that could take longer to correct. And no matter the headlines, he says, to complete that return.
In reading a lot of these social media posts and the like, there's been some talk about waiting to file or don't bother to file. I think that's a fool's recommendation.
In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
New car prices dipped by just over 2% last month, but there is fear that President Trump's proposed tariffs on cars imported into the U.S. could cause prices to rise again. Jen Sullivan explains how tariffs could impact the entire auto industry.
In the market to buy a new car, be prepared to pay a lot. The average price for a new car last month was over $48,000. That's $11,000 more than 5 years ago, according to Kelley Blue Book, which monitors auto prices.
Obviously, cars today look a lot different than they did 20, 30 years ago. All the technology, that costs money.
Jessica Caldwell with Edmunds, a car expert company, says prices could go up even more this year. That's because President Donald Trump has proposed 25% tariffs on all cars imported to the U.S. beginning in April to incentivize companies to keep jobs in the U.S. and encourage buyers to buy American. But that could cause sticker shock on foreign cars.
That's going to add significant costs.
But it's not just foreign cars that would be impacted. Prices on American cars are likely to go up as well. That's because many U.S. companies have plants overseas and wouldn't be able to move production by the spring.
The auto industry is such a global business now. It's not so regionalized where everything comes from this and that this is where it's sold, this is where it's produced.
The Trump administration has said the tariffs would include semiconductors, a part that is crucial to new cars. But it's not clear if these tariffs would apply to all car parts. If they do, it could mean higher prices to simply repair your car if those parts are made overseas.
If you think you're going to buy a vehicle in the next 6 months or a year and you're worried about all of this, it's probably better to buy sooner rather than later.
For Consumer Watch, I'm Jen Sullivan.
Well, today is February 25th, and while it's a special day because it happens to be my son's birthday, happy birthday, Adam, love you, buddy, but it's also World Spay Day. The San Diego Humane Society wants to remind pet owners of the importance of spaying and neutering. The organization says it helps protect your pet's health by reducing negative behavior and lowering the risk of some cancers. But they say it's equally important to underscore the urgent need to come together as a community to reduce the overcrowding of shelters.
This little fella was actually just neutered today, and I'm so glad he was able to benefit from this really important procedure. That's going to help ensure that he has the best chance at a long and healthy life. This year in particular, San Diego Humane Society and many other shelters across the country have been experiencing unprecedented numbers of animals in the shelter, especially puppies and kittens. By spaying and neutering your pets, you can help us and help the animals by preventing unplanned litters.
In 2024, San Diego Humane Society received many commonly desired breeds: 1,200 Labradors, 321 French Bulldogs, 296 Pugs, and 110 golden retrievers, as well as many smaller breeds. And by the way, KPBS has a 30-minute special examining the problem of overcrowded shelters, and you can watch it at kpbs.org or the KPBS YouTube channel.
As we go through the upcoming hours, those winds offshore really getting a little bit stronger for us. So we do have a weaker Santa Ana event coming with some of the mountains and the canyons picking up 45-mile-per-hour wind gusts or just about. It is going to lead to a warm stretch as some will be pushing towards 90 degrees. However, notably cooler air does come in for the weekend, onshore flow, and actually a bit of a storm system trying to push into Southern California. Doesn't really offer much, though, in the way of moisture. As we head through tonight, we go to 51 in the city, 43 in Oceanside, Mount Laguna coming in at 42 degrees. Still maybe a few of those coastal clouds trying to set up. We had some of those out there through the early morning hours recently, so it has created a few fog conditions. But overall, our pattern is high pressure kicking in, offshore flow, very warm, very dry. Because of the pressure gradient strengthening just enough throughout the day, we see those offshore winds pick up a little bit throughout Wednesday and heading into Thursday. So for tomorrow's forecast, we're up there as far as numbers are concerned. Mid-70s, 76 the high for the city. Chula Vista also at 75. And look at Ramona, 88 degrees, I should say there. Borrego Springs coming in at 88 as well. Like I said, there'll be a few spots trying to punch towards 90 degrees. It is going to be warm, if not record challenging heat for some as we head throughout this time frame. Coastal communities, mid-70s. Thursday is going to be our warmest day as those offshore winds continue. Temps there in the lower 80s. As we transition through our inland communities, we're going up to the upper 80s for Thursday too. 88 for that high, still keeping a couple of clouds out there. Once we get into the mountains, this is where things start to turn around a little bit for us. Our warmest day is actually going to be tomorrow, and then with those offshore winds lightening up a little bit, things will trend down at least slightly here heading into Friday and Saturday when we are cooler. And look at Sunday, the showers possible for us to end the weekend with temperatures in the mid-40s. And desert communities, our warmest day will be in the upper 80s, close to 90 degrees in a few spots tomorrow. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Melissa Constanzer.
An effort to save a North County water park is gaining traction online. The Wave Water Park in Vista was innovative when it was first opened in 1994, but now it's in dire need of a refresh. The city is considering bringing in a private operator. That is worrying to parents of high school swimmers since it's the only pool in Vista where they can practice.
My fear initially is that, they could decide that they don't want to rent it out to the schools. Vista Unified and the City of Vista have a really great relationship in using and, allowing the high schools to use this. And there's no guarantee for that.
So under any of the options that are chosen, the Wave will always continue to belong to the people of Vista, and it will always be managed by the City Council. And the people of Vista and the parents of the student athletes here will always have the ability to have access.
More than $3 million is needed just to make the park operable. So far, around 130 people have signed the Save the Wave Water Park petition on change.org. The city of San Diego is supporting a refugee-run catering company as part of its diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. KPBS reporter Katie Hyson says the women have been leaning on each other, for much longer.
United Women of East Africa's kitchen fills with the scent of crackling coffee beans and sizzling sambusas. The nonprofit started a catering company, Baraka and Bilal, over 10 years ago, after they realized the biggest need of the refugee women they serve is self-sufficiency.
People are saying, well, what's kind of causing us stress is that we don't have, stable income.
That's partnership manager Bethlehem Degu. The city just chose Baraka and Bilal to receive services and business training. The program supports minority-owned businesses, even as the federal government ends support for DEI efforts and refugees. Degu says the women who run Baraka and Bilal are leaning on each other.
I think the last month has felt a little heavy. So I think there are some people who are, a little bit fearful, maybe feel like they're not accepted. And so maybe, they're kind of not wanting to, kind of go out or, it's a little bit of fearfulness, I guess. And then there's also some people who are kind of coming together and saying, we're going to be resilient. We're not going to, be afraid. We're going to be a resource to each other.
They plan to open a cafe in Rolando Park next month and invite San Diegans to get to know their food and them. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
Go to our website to watch tonight's stories, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.